Good evening, Professor Chen. And eu vou falar primeiro em português, depois eu vou passar para o inglês, ok? Então, bom dia a todos e todas, boa noite para quem estiver nos assistindo da China e de outros países. Boas-vindas a todo mundo, muito bem-vindos ao quarto encontro da rede RBCHINA. Meu nome é Daniele Ramos, eu sou professora da Universidade de Brasília e serei a mediadora de hoje em nosso encontro. So, welcome everybody to the fourth meeting of the RBCHINA network. It's our great pleasure and honor to receive Professor Chen GUANGJIN to talk today about the main tendencies of income differences in China and some macrostructural explanations. Professor Tom DWYER will be our discussant. So my name is Daniele Ramos. I'm from University of Brasilia. I'm gonna coordinate this table today. So welcome everybody. So this is the third conference given to the network meetings by professors invited by CAS UNICAMP Center for Studies on China. So Professor Chen and Professor Tom DWYER are working together for some years now. So they are meeting yearly, and they have also meetings every week, having classes and working together at UNICAMP University and also CAS. So the Brazilian president of this center is Professor Raquel Meneghello from UNICAMP. Professor Ling Chunling is the Chinese director of the center, and Professor Chen GUANGJIN is the president of this center. So Professor Tom DWYER is the president director, and he's our discussant today, as I said. And Professor Célio Iratuca from UNICAMP is also a member from this Center for Chinese Studies at CAS, UNICAMP. And now I'm going to introduce Professor Chen GUANGJIN, and then I will also introduce Professor Tom DWYER. So Professor Chen GUANGJIN has a bachelor's and master's degree in philosophy from the Department of Philosophy of Fudan University, and his philosophy doctor from the Department of Sociology of the Graduate School of the Chinese Academy of Social Science. At present, Professor Chen is a senior research fellow, professor and director in general of Institute of Sociology, CAS, and head of the School of Sociology of CAS, the University of CAS, and he's president of Chinese Sociological Association. Chen's main research areas include rural sociology, social structure and social inequality, social development and governance, and private business owner classes. He has published widely in China and in top-rated reviews in the West. He's the author or co-author of more than 20 books. Meanwhile, he has published more than 50 academic papers and reports. And he's the chief editor of the biannual Yearbook of Chinese Sociology, the chief editor of Sociological Research. So we can say this is the best sociological journal in China, and one of the chief editors of the Social Blue Book Society in China, Analysis and Forecasts published annually. Professor Tom DWYER, our discussant today, he graduated from Victoria University of Wellington in 1973, master's from Victoria University of Wellington, and he has a PhD from École des Hautes Études en Sciences Sociales in Paris, France. He has a postdoctoral study from the University of Canterbury and postdoctoral from Cornell University. He's currently a professor at the Department of Sociology at the State University of Campinas, leader of the Interdisciplinary Laboratory of Informatics and Society from UNICAMP, member of the Executive Committee of the International Sociological Association from 2010 to 2014. He was president of the Brazilian Society of Sociology from 2005 to 2009 and vice president of Research Committee 34 and also International Sociological Association from 2006 to 2010. And he's member of many editorial boards of scientific journal. So Professor Chen GUANGJIN presentation today will examine both general questions of economic development and changes in economic inequality over time, and examine questions related to types of company capital structure and their relationship to inequality, as well as other related questions. Isn't that, Professor Cheng? So please, you have the floor. Welcome again. It's an honor to receive you today. And so you have the floor for 40 to 45 minutes or longer if you think it's necessary. Thank you very much again for your presence.
Thank you very much. Sorry. So now I share the PPT. Yeah. Sorry, now this can I can't to. 李转又上不去了。又不能共享
行了吗？是您摁那个没有用吗？
在这已经可以了。
可以了。OK。
好 ，OK。Okay, everybody. Good morning. In China now it's evening, but in Brazil it's morning. And welcome to attend this meeting. And here I will give a presentation about the main tendencies of income differences in China and some macro structural explanations. Well, the time is from 1978 to today, generally speaking. But maybe sometime because of the data limited, maybe I just can talk about some 10 years or over the period of reform and opening in China. And as you last time, when I gave the other presentation to you, I mainly talk about the increased tendency of income and the consumption of Chinese people since 1978. And today, according to the arrangement from the Brazil sites of the Center of China Study in University of Camila. Today I will talk about this topic. And the time for me is about 40 or to 45. I will do my best to as quickly as possible to end my talk and give how to say enough time for you to discuss. Okay, and so here I will also talk something about the total trends of income increases of rural and urban residents in China from 1978 to 1915. I should say maybe to 2020. Okay, it's very simple. Now, this figure shows you the GDP per capita in China, the increasing tendency from 1978 to 2019, and here you will find that here I tell you the per year increasing ratios is 8.42% in this whole period. And why to talk at the GDP? As you know, GDP is the basis of the income of Chinese people. And as you know, during the whole period, Chinese GDP increased very quickly. How to say, especially before the 2010 up to, and after 2010, the GDP's increasing rate decreased down year by year. So now I call this stage of economic development in China as new normal stage. That means the GDP's increasing rate is not so high as before. According to the official statistics, in 2019, the GDP growth rate is lower than the 6%. But you also will find as for the growth rate of GDP, this line is punctuate, not a straight line. That means the Chinese economic growth is not slightly increasing, just punctually increasing. But anyway, the relative quick increase of the GDP set a good basis for the increase of income for Chinese people. And here will give this figure will give the tendency of per capita disposable income of urban residents from 1978 to 2090. And according to this data also from the official statistics, and according to the statistics, for the urban residents, the income growth rate per year in this period is 7.28%. But you also will find that the growth rate or increasing rate is not so steady. It's just very, how to say, punctuate. 遗传是这个波动是叫 punctuate 的是吧？遗传。
对对 ，punctuate
punctuate. And this year, the growth rate from this year and this year is negative. Is negative. As you know, in these years in China, some very important political events occurred in China. That means the also called 8-9 movement in Beijing, and then the government strengthened the limitation to the township enterprises. So the also influence the incoming rate of urban residents, but this impacts is higher than for the rural regions than that of urban residents. Anyway, during the whole period, this growth rate is also very, how to say, very, very high, I think, very high. If with comparison to the average level of the whole world. So that means the Chinese people is for example, for the urban residents, just because they have more and more income, and then their everyday life will be improved year by year. And then And this figure shows the per capita net or disposable income of rural residents during the same period. And the per year growth rate is 7.61% in this period. Here I use two words. One is net, and the second is disposable for the rural residents' income. Just maybe before 2010, maybe before 2010, the official statistics gave different standards to calculate the incomes of rural and urban residents. So just because of the different standards, so the data is somewhat different. The statistics data for the rural and urban residents. Maybe before 2010 is so-called net. That means deducted, deduced. They come deduced of the production cost and like the tax. And so for the disposable, it's a somewhat different term. And then same as that of rural urban residents' income statistics. But now the new statistics book of the from the official department, the standard now is united. About the tendency itself of income of rural residents, you also will find the different tendency from that of the urban, the income of urban residents. So you can find this line is different. Before 1920, 1984, the growth rate or the inflation rate is very high, higher than 10%. And then after from 1985 and on, the growth rate is lower and lower than that. So that means the reform in urban areas now is opening from these years. And meanwhile, the agricultural production now is how to say, the value of the production of the agricultural production is how to say, according to the official statistics, is decreased. So from this year and to now, the growth rate of income of rural residents punctuate from year to year. But what we also find that same tendencies from this year to today is decreased year by year. This here is a move, a wave and a wave like that. So it's just why the tendency is like that. I think the main reason, the main causes is the GDP growth rate decreased. But during the whole period, you will find the per year growth rate is 7.61%. Itself is high, I think, and then it's higher than that of the growth rate of income of urban residents. So just because of these tendencies in China, the gaps, the income gaps between rural and urban areas is narrowing year by year. Is how to say, is a positive phenomenon in China. And then another important events is the transfer income increasing year by year. You will the blue pillow is about the transfer income of urban residents, and the red pillow is about the rural residents, the transfer income. Why show you this one? And you know, as you know, the taxes and transfer expenditure from the government or from the public department always means to deduce, to narrow the gaps, the income inequalities between, for example, between the rural and urban residents. So in China, the scholars from economics and sociology always will put an important temptation, main attention to the transform income for rural and urban residents. And I see the case is the same in Brazil. And according to the statistics from OECD, the transfer income and taxes as the adjustment of income distribution play a very important role to narrow the income gap or income inequalities in a society. And according to the same statistical data from OECD, for example, in 2009, the effect from the transfer expenditures and taxes will, will decrease the Gini coefficient at about 1/3. For example, before this kinds of adjustment, the so-called market income Gini coefficient will be more than 0.5. And after this adjustment, this Gini coefficient will be decreased to lower than 0.4. So in China, the case is similar. The government and the academia very, pay more attention to this effect of the income adjustment. So I show you the tendency of the transfer income per capita of rural and urban residents. And very pitiful that I can't get the data of taxations. So I can't do any analysis of the rural or impacts of the taxation effect on the narrowing of Gini coefficient. And then I also want to show you the wage per capita of urban employees working for different units with different ownership. And the unit is yuan. And here we divide the different ownerships with the working units with different ownerships into 9 categories. The first one is so-called state-owned and collective and cooperative, joint, limited liability corporations, shareholding corporations limited, and others actually private sectors. And then Hong Kong and Macau and Taiwan invested units and FDI, 9 categories of working units with different ownerships. And here you can find that, you can find the 2016 to 2000. That means the times of increasing as in 2016 as in 2000. So yes, that means the times. Here you will find the state-owned, collective or cooperative, and the shareholding corporations limited. The growth rate, I mean, the times is the highest ones. And then the joint and the private sectors, HMT invested and the FDI, the growth times is lower, is lower, but we should attend the basic data. The basic yields data is different. So, for example, for the FDI in 2000 is very high than other units. So it's different. So, generally speaking, we will say for any of these different working units with different ownerships are all increasing the wage per capita, but for different units, the growth rate is different. It's one thing. And then these figures show you the wage per capita of urban employees, which for different units based on different factors. According to the official statistics, the sector's division is different from before 2005 and after 2016 is different. And so I can do the comparison in the whole period. I just take these years as examples, and we also will find that in this 11 years, the increasing rate or the growth rate also is very, how to say, it's a relatively okay. I think it's good, but different is lower than that showed in this table, and is the continued for the wages per capita for employees working for different units based on the industrial sectors, or not the industrial sectors, just the economic sectors, the financial, real estate, like that. So the situation, the case is similar, I think. Oh, and then maybe you will concern about the situation of income or wage for those migrant workers. Sorry, should be workers, not workers. Okay. And according to the official statistics, in these 12 years, the wage per capita of the migrant workers is like that, like this figure. Anyway, for the migrant workers, the wage per capita, generally speaking, lower than that of the urban workers. But we also will find that the growth rate, how to say, is moderate. I think is moderate, and I think also the wage per capita of migrant workers increase as the growth rate, the GDP growth rate increasing. The tendency is similar, and this figure just shows the numbers of the migrant workers in China. So now, near to how to say, near to 290, how to say, and 李传用英文表达这个2亿9,077万，这个农民工说
哦，刚才我没看啊，我看2亿
，9,077万农民工。
2亿 ，so 2,900 millions.
Oh, 2,000 million. Yeah. Okay. It's a big, how to say, scale. I think.
290 million. Yeah.
The population of Brazil, will be maybe smaller. This is the scale of the migrant workers in China. Okay.
Yeah. 290 million. Yeah. 290 million migrant workers. Yeah.
Yes. And this table shows that this table, these two tables show you the within the rural and urban areas, the per capita disposable income increasing in tendency by income quantile. So why I show this one, this figure data, just because later I will do analysis the income inequality or differences within the rural and urban residents, respectively, by income quantile. So here I show you in advance the increase, not the inequality. And you will find for the urban residents, the within by income, the analyzed by income quantile, the disposable income per capita, the growth rate of the disposable income per capita also is very high in this 50 years. In the 50 years, so the nominal growth rate per year for different grouping by income quantile, all of them are very high, I think, but it's nominal growth rate. If real growth rate may be much lower than these figures, I think. Okay, This will show you the disposable income per capita of rural residents by income quintile. Yeah, the tendency is similar. So just now give a very general picture about the Chinese, about the income increasing of rural and urban residents in China. Now, let's to observe the change in tendencies of income differences in rural and urban China during the same period. And firstly, I will talk about the general income difference, the total measurement of the income difference in whole Chinese society using the Gini coefficient. And this line is show the tendency, general tendency. You will find that before 2009, generally speaking, the Gini coefficient is increasing year by year, and in this year and this year, it's reach its peak. Its peak, yeah, means the 0.49. The same. Yeah, not 2008 is the highest, 0.491 like that. So in this year, temperature rate, I think, is wavy, but the general tendency is increasing. And after 2010, the Gini coefficient began to decrease up to 2016, and after these years, for example, in 2017 and 2018, the Gini coefficient going up, and maybe according to some scholars, calculation, expectation, the Gini coefficient is still higher than, for example, than this year, that 2018. But 2020, this Gini coefficient again decrease. But so you can find that this year, during this period, for the Chinese society, the Gini coefficient is a very, how to say, steady. We hope the Gini coefficient will be decreased year by year, but actually it's very difficult, just because that some structural reasons. And later I will give some microstructural analysis of the reasons about the Gini coefficients changing tendency. And it's official statistics, but according to some academic institutions, according to their investigation or how to say the surveys, the Gini coefficient may be much higher than that of official statistics. For example, our national survey, named as Chinese General Social Survey, CSS, for example, in 2011, this Gini coefficient will maybe it's how to say it's 0. More than 0.5. But if we observe the survey findings about the Gini coefficient together from different academic institutions, we will find that the tendency, the changing tendency of Gini coefficient is similar as that of official statistics. So the difference between these two kinds of statistics outcomes, I think the main reason is the survey itself. As you know, the survey conducted by academic institutions, the data, how to say, in their data, survey data, will including some high-income residents, but the official statistics based on their accounts of households, sometimes will how to say, it's not complete. I think it's not complete. But just because it's not the survey of academic institutions of China is not continuous year by year. So generally speaking, when we do analysis of the tendency of Gini coefficient in China, we will use the data from the official statistics is the most complete and continue year by year. Okay, and this figure show you the income gaps between the rural and urban residents in China. As you know, in China, this income gap get more attention than other kinds of income gaps, just because these gaps will play a very important role on the social studies needs and political studies and the social harmonies. So many scholars, many officials will pay more attention to these income gaps in China. And you also will find that before 2009, this year, before the 9, this gap is in generally speaking going up, increasing. Of course, before this year, 1984, just because the growth rate of income of rural residents is much higher than that of urban residents. So the income gap between the rural and the urban residents is going down. It's going down. And then after 1985, just because for all, I should say, the main reason is the beginning of reform and opening in urban areas now is started. So the income of rural of urban residents, the growth rate income of urban residents now increasing more quick than that of rural residents. So the income gaps between the rural and urban residents are going up, but not a straight line you can find. And then after, and then at 2009, this gap reached its peak. That means the income of the income per capita of urban residents is 3 times as that of 3.33 times as that of rural residents is the highest point or the peak. And then after the 2010, just because the government want to improve the livelihood of rural people, and then provide a lot of public expenditure on the development of rural areas, especially to reduce the poverty, especially the extreme poverty in rural area. So the income, the transfer income for the rural people is much more than that of rural, the urban residents. Maybe I should say not the growth rate also is higher than that of urban residents. So the income gap between the rural and urban residents in China is decreasing, is going down after 2010 to now, till to now. Yeah. And here, this table shows the income difference or inequality within urban residents by income quantile. The ratios of disposable income per capita of the upper group to those of other groups. That means the upper group's income per capita compared to the first, the lowest, the middle lower, and the middle upper. So you will find the tendency of changing of these ratios shown in this table, and you will find for the urban residents the ratios, for example, of the upper group to that of lowester, the times basically study. In 2005, it's 5.33. That means for urban residents, the income per capita of the upper group is 5.33 times as that of the lowest group, So, and in this year, it's just increased at 0.1, the 17 times. And for these three ratios, you will find the tendency means the gap between the upper group and the middle lower and the middle upper groups are decreasing, going down. So we always pay more attention to these ratios, just because these ratios will decide the basic inequality or difference between different income groupings. And for the urban areas, the ratios is more than 5 times. I think you will find it's also well big. But if we compare this to that of these ratios, you can find that for the rural people, within the rural residents, the income difference between different income groupings are different, and the differences or the inequality is higher than that of urban residents. You can find that. So that means for rural areas in China, the situation or the changing tendencies of income difference within the residents by the on the income quintile, the situation is how to say is disadvantageous. It's not so good. You will find that. If you, for example, even for these 3 ratios, the value is higher, are higher than these 3 ratios. And more importantly, especially for the upper, the income difference, all the ratios of the upper groups to that of the lowest is very big. The ratios very big. And before 2018, the ratios is increasing year by year, and then in 2019, it decreased somewhat. So for China, you in this figure, we find that after 2016, the Gini coefficient for the whole society is going up. Why? This here maybe give some explanation for us. And here is about this table is about the wages gaps between employees working for different units with different ownerships in urban. And here, the wage per capita of employees working for FDI units are equals 100. And then we will find the gap for different unit with different ownerships is different. You can find that. But here I mark this letter with different colors. For example, the red color means the gap, the wage gap between state-owned units and FDI units is decreasing just because this percentages is going up. So that means the wage gaps decreasing, they're going down. And the purples here for the joint means first decreasing the gap, decreasing firstly, and then broadening. And the green here means a tendency of you inverted totally. Firstly, is going down, and is going down, and then yeah, and then firstly going up and then going down, like that. Yes, it's like a U-inverted curve, and then for the blue means no change, or basically, or no change, no yeah, how to say the obvious change, no obvious change. Yeah, that means for China, the private sectors, the wage per capita of employees in private sectors, and the FDI units, the gap between them, the gap is, firstly, I should say, is very big, and then no obvious change. And then the HMT, I mean, means Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan invested the unit, and the FDI units, between these two kinds of the units, the wage gap is also increasing, generally speaking. And this table, including this that continued, yeah, show us the wage gap between employees working for different units by sector grouping, and the wage per capita of employees from the financial sector equals 100. And at the similar, you will find that the red here, the red means inverted U, and the black dark means broadening, and the dark blue here means competing. That means the IT industry, for the IT industry, the wage per capita is competing with that of financial sector. So you can find that. So there's two sectors is in these two sectors, the income per capita always very high and much higher than that in other sectors in China. This table show you the similar tendencies, and it's about the income gaps between different units. And here we also will show you the wage gaps between urban workers and the migrant workers. So-called migrant workers also means from workers from rural areas. Yeah, always in Chinese, 农民工, yes, and you will find that the general tendency, the wage gaps between the urban workers and the migrant workers is going down, but before, especially after 2016, but in this year, especially in this year, going down very significantly. But among these 3 years, basically speaking, no obvious, no significant changes. That means these years, the gap is steady between the urban workers and migrant workers. This also will give some离场这个线索或者是暗示怎么说来着？
我看过啊，是线索和暗示 hints 是吗
？Yes, that means the difficulties for China to narrow the general income inequality differences, just because it's difficult for example, for the these categories of comparisons between different units, different sectors, different income groupings will tell us in these years it's very difficult to continue very significantly narrow the income gap in China, in Chinese society, just because, as you know, the economy itself, the growth of the economy itself, or the GDP, is very the increasing tendency is very difficult to be kept at the same level as in or as before 2010. It's very difficult. So for today for China, how to narrow the income gaps or income difference is a very important, a very difficult political task and social targets. So I want to give some explanation from the macro perspectives about the income differences in China. Just before I gave some hints. And firstly, let's to observe the general, the macro tendency of the growth, the increasing growth of the growth of GDP and the income of rural and residents. And then you will find that there's three lines close each other together more and more year by year, more closer to each other year by year. That means although in these years it's become more difficult to narrow the income gaps, but I can see the basis for these goals, or for the targets, or for the tasks is how to say prepared. Just because you find the micro income distribution, the tendency, the situation is improved according to these figures. And then in this table, in this figure, I show you the general, the total measurement of income differences using the Gini coefficient, and the tendency, the trends is like that. And then how to, the first structural explanations is the positive change in the microstructure of national income distribution. According to this figure, we can find this figure is about the general, the total, the distribution of income using the incoming approach components analysis approach of gross regional products, including three kinds of four parts of the total GDP. Yeah, income approach opponents. The first one is the composition of employees. The second one is net taxes on production, and the third is depreciation of fixed assets, and the last one is operating surplus. And maybe you can understand that the more important is that and this, is this and this. That means Q is income distribution for employees, for the laborers, and the Q is from the capitals, including the state-owned and the private capitals. So these two lines, the tendency, their relations between these two lines means always deceive, determine the macro income differences or income inequality. So if these two, how to say, this line, yeah, the percentage is higher and higher, and then is going down. Here is going up. That means you will find that the general income gap will be narrowed year by year. But if the components or the proportion of the employees are going up, and the proportions of operating surplus are going up, which will mean the general income gap or inequality will going up. The gap will broaden. So it's the basic, I think, is the basic reasons for the changing tendency of income inequalities in China. Is the more important. These two kinds of income distribution, the tendency is more important. It's determinative. Is the determinative for the general income inequality in China. And we hope these two lines will close to each other more and more, and then the total income inequality will be narrowed and narrowed year by year. Yes. And this figure will give some explanation for the income gap between the rural and urban residents. Yeah. The blue pillow means the proportion of agricultural GDP. Yeah. Yeah, every year. The proportion of the agricultural GDP. And the red pillow means the proportion of agricultural employment. And then the green line means the ratio of the proportion of agricultural GDP to the proportion of agricultural employment. So you will find, especially in these years, that the proportion of agricultural GDP is more than 3 times of that. Should we say the proportion of agricultural employment is more than 3 times as the proportion of agricultural GDP. That means one labor in rural areas, one three laborers share 1 GDP. Yeah. 李厂这个份额怎么说？就是这个图说的是说告诉我们是说这个3个农业劳动3份农业劳动分享1份 GDP 这是这个图说的是这个，它解释了城乡差距的最本质的问题。你帮我翻译一下。
Okay, so this the 不好意思，您说那个3份是什么的3份？
就是劳动力，3份劳动力只生产了1份 GDP，而在城市呢是反过来，1份劳动力生产了3份 GDP。
Okay, so in the rural area, there's 3 shares of labor power that produce the same GDP, but whereas in the cities, there's so 1 share of labor power produce the city GDP. 您是这个意思吗？
对，就是这种结构性的扭曲，它解释了这个我们的这个大部分的这个城乡收入差距。就是因为这个劳动力比重和叫就业比重和这个产值比重这个差距大。
So the difference in the composition of labor power explains the tendency of the income difference between rural areas and cities and urban cities.
That means we call this situation as a structural distortion. These kinds of structural distortion determine the income gap between rural and urban areas to a great extent. And then this figure I use to explain the income inequality within different income groupings. Also, this tendency can give some hints to explain the general income inequality in whole China. So these 2 lines show the times of the ratios of the upper income grouping to that of the lowest income group. So the bold here is, I think, especially in the blue means the urban, and this yellow means the rural, and then you can find, generally speaking, the general tendency is going up. So it will give some explanation to the general income inequality in China. That means in the situation, the case this is similar in rural and urban areas. So,
sorry to interrupt you, Professor CHEN. I would kindly ask you to come to conclusions so we can pass the floor to Professor Tom. Thank you.
Okay.
If you come to the conclusions.
陈所就是这个时间到了是吗？时间有点对，时间有点超了。然后
Okay, well, quickly to show very quickly.
Just have 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
About the structural explanation for the income gap between different working units with different ownership, and this should ratios of average wage of employees working in the non-private sector to that of employees working in private sector in urban areas. And here is about the different sectors, the wages gap is will to do contributions to the total income inequality in China. Here is about the gap between transfer income of rural and urban residents. You also will find that the reduction in the difference between the transfer incomes of rural and urban residents has a positive effect on narrowing of the income gap between the rural and the urban residents, and subsequently reduce income difference at the national level. And some very brief conclusions and discussion, but I think it's very because of the time, I will very simply to show you. Maybe I don't how to say to read them to you like that. So generally speaking, today China pay more attention about to the narrowing of the income inequality, especially the central government want to how to say now has prepared a lot of strategy and policies to how to say, to set a good environment, the policy environment to narrow the income, especially to improve the first the marked income distribution, the redistribution, and the 第三次分配词上离场，就三次分配结构进行调整，来缩小收入差距。
第三次分配so the third
包括第一次啊、第二次、第三次啊，就是初次分配、再分配和第三次分配，就是公益。
So the third wave of redistribution， 然后陈所，然后什么第三次分配之后，不好意思，
就是进行整体进行调整，来缩小收入差距，实现共同富。
So the third wave of redistribution policy here in China promotes this new national discourse of commonwealth to
prosperity.
Common prosperity to ease the income in differences.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Professor Chen, for your broad and deep analysis and explanations and your generosity for presenting so many data. I will pass the floor to Professor DWYER for his 5-10 minutes comments. We have to finish at 10:30. Thank you so much again.
Okay.
Now I end the show.
Yeah.
对，陈所把那个就行。
Okay. Thank you, GUANGJIN. The first time I ever heard you talk about this theme was in 2011 at a seminar at CAS, and where you presented the chapter in this book, which we published in 2013. And it's very interesting to see what has happened. This was a book we did together, this was 10 years ago. And in your last sentence here, you say, China is preparing for a plan of comprehensive reform of income distribution and formulating economic and social policies with a view to increasing people's income and expanding consumption. With the implementation of these measures and plans, I will believe there will be opportunities for China to gradually reduce its income inequalities. And what you have shown, nearly all your graphs show that from around about 2010, the income inequalities, except in some sectors, are dropping. So especially in rural, where you have lots of transfer payments. Yeah. So it looks like some things were going to plan. But then we have seen that the technology, information technology, is one sector that is going way ahead, perhaps because of the laws of supply and demand, scarce number of information scientists and things like this. And we see that this is where the income is increasing, and this is where inequalities are increasing. And what we have been reading a lot in the Western press recently is how the Chinese government is now starting to pressure the income technology sector and reduce its power. Is this, my first question, is this a response to what is happening on income distribution as well as something else, that the IT, the information technology sector, its monopolies are being broken more or less? The big groups are maybe becoming smaller, like Baidu and things. First question. Second question, you contrasted national statistics and CAS social survey statistics. My students often ask, which statistics do we use? I always say, well, I tell my students, oh, maybe we should think more about using CAS statistics because they are there to control the other statistics. Which statistics do you think a Brazilian researcher seeing coming from China should prefer to use? CAS statistics or national income statistics? The third point is that I'm very impressed by what we see, because this shows a very high degree of policy commitment to reducing income inequality. And my question is, how do you dialogue with the economists? Because the economists, at least those with a Western training, will say, oh, eventually the market will look after inequality. And it seems now that the Chinese government is saying, no, the market will not look after inequality. Politics must look after inequality. So they would be my three questions for a start.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Professor Tom. Please, Professor Chen, you have the floor.
Sorry.
We only have 2-3 minutes to finish, but please have the floor.
Yeah, the time. Sorry. Just because on the computer I can't read the time, so I don't know how minutes I take. Sorry.
I think we have 3-4 minutes to finish, if you can do that, or maybe pick one of the questions so we can discuss before the end. Thank you.
So you means I respond to the question of Tom?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you want to
他
just...
第一个问题和第三个问题我没太明白。
第三个问题是那个如何那个跟那个经济学家们来对话，就是来说服他们，就是因为经济学家们都认为市场会自动纠正这个事情，但是社会学家们发现这个不是这样的，就是这个如何来解释？
这是第三个问题。第一个问题呢？
第一个问题是那个 IT 那个产业当时发展的特别快，然后后来对于那个阿里巴巴类似那样的当时那种管理，是不是是一种对于那个反应？
对收入问题的反应是吧？
对。
Okay, I get. For the first question, I think at the beginning, the target of the government to control the IT enterprises, for example, the Alibaba, is not to reduce the income inequality or income difference in China. I think the regions are very complicated. From the economic perspective, I think the Alibaba's action, the behavior, maybe is harmful for the market order. As you know, the so-called 蚂蚁金服, yeah, this platform will, how to say, will play a negative role for the financial market in China. Financial market, 是这么说吧，金融市场，李川。
Financial market,
yeah.
financial sector.
Yeah, financial sector. Just because the 蚂蚁金服 is a product of is a financial product conducted by the Alibaba to give, how to say, debts, 贷款是 loan, yeah, loan to many peoples, and then the interest rate is how to say, well, at the beginning maybe very low, but as the time going, the interest rates will higher and higher. Then the order of the financial sector or the financial market will be harmed by these kinds of behavior from the Alibaba. So the first thing is to control, is to set the order of the financial market in China. And secondly, I think these kinds of financial behavior are conducted by the Alibaba will be somewhat harmful for the social order. Yes, you know, the common people, those take part in the Alibaba's 蚂蚁金服 financial service. Then finally, at the end, they will be harmed just because the higher and higher interest rates of the loan from the 蚂蚁金服. And in China, so the secondly, that means these kinds of financial behavior also will be very harmful for the income distribution. The thirdly, I think, but not only the income distribution control. Just because in China, we call these kinds of financial behavior as cut, 割韭菜怎么说 ？Cutting.
割韭菜 so I think it basically means taking advantage of the common people, I think.
Yes, yeah. That means that Alibaba take assets, take capital, take income from common people too much. So the government said it's not good. This is for the question, the first question. For the second question, the data, about the data. Yeah. Generally speaking, just now I said the survey data conducted also by the scholar institutions, academic institutions, including CAS and some universities, is not continual. Is with maybe, for example, our survey will be conducted 2 years, one time, and other institutions, for example, the People's University, Renmin University of China, also will be conducted year by 1 year, one time, but their data can provide complete data of income distribution. So otherwise, and then meanwhile, the survey, the population of the survey is also different from that of the official statistics. So when we want to do the quantitative 就是那个定量的quantitative analysis. For example, what kinds of factors influence the income industry, income distribution? Then we will use the data from survey. But if we just want to analyze the general tendencies for all trends of the income differences change, then we will prefer using the official statistics, just because the official statistics data is very continual year by year. So for different tasks or for different aims, we use different data from different sources. And generally speaking, in China, if the official statistics is available, we will use the official data. But it's not, well, if it's not available, we will not use it. For the third question, I think, yeah, in China, nowadays, the economists also began to change their idea, their thinking, or the thinking way, theoretical thinking way. That means, for example, the former vice president of CAS, Professor Cai Feng, originally, he is an economist, but now he also know that we should understand, we should know just the economic growth itself can't improve the income distribution situation automatically. But we need a lot more and more social policies, social strategies to change the situation of the income distribution in China. So now it's easier than before to interact, to discuss with economists. And but before 10 years, it's difficult. I remember that maybe in 2010, I was discussed this question, this topic with economists, Professor Li Shi. Maybe Tom know him. Yeah, Li Shi. Yeah, very difficult. Li Shi insists that the economic growth, economic development itself can reduce the income inequality. And I say even the Kuznets himself also said, I remember in 1966, in one book of his, said, for the Western world, yeah, they can't depend the economic growth itself to improve the income distribution situation. It means to narrow the gap. But Professor Li Shi answered me, the hypothesis, Kuznets hypothesis, when it be raised, the change is not will not be depend on Kuznets himself. 意思就是说，库兹涅茨假说提出来以后，库兹涅茨本人以后怎么说已经无关紧要，是这个意思。你跟他说一下，这是10年前李石跟我说的。
So Professor Shanmin said the response from Professor Li Shi was that once the Kuznets thesis hypothesis is published, it is irrelevant to the thesis itself what happens afterwards.
Yeah, but 10 years later, the economists, very famous, more and more famous economists say the economic growth itself is not enough to improve the situation of income distribution in China. So I think now it's easier to communicate with economists between the sociologists and the economists.
So it's a victory for sociologists, yeah?
I think the main reason is the government, the central government.
Yeah.
Yeah, the central government say we should build a new society with common prosperity. So we should take a lot of public policy and strategies to do this. And in 2035, we should how to say, we should realize the goal of common prosperity to a great extent. And then in 2050, we should build a new society with common prosperity. So the scholars, you can't say other things. Just because the fact itself shows us the market itself, the economic growth itself can't automatically improve the situation of income distribution. The fact tells us, the fact gives us lessons. What about the income distribution? So now in China, the the ideas between the economists and the sociologists now closing each other to each other more and more. Okay.
Thank you so much, Professor Cheng, for your brilliant presentation, for your generosity of sharing your thoughts, your explanations to us, and hope we can be together to see how China is transforming society and how it will be in 2050. And thank you so much, Professor Ton, for your comments, for your discussions and questions, and your very kind presentation. And thank you all for being here with us, and for Professor Isabella for inviting us, for organizing this huge conference, and also for Alba Boaventura for her support. And so thank you very much for this time. And unfortunately, we run out of time, and we have to finish this section. And thank you all again for being with us. See you soon. Thank you.
Maybe next year we will do similar things based on the center. Okay.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be great.
Professor Lichuan, for your help. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Guangjing, thank you very much, Li Chuan, for all your help. Okay, so now you go to bed. Okay, thank you very much.